PNG's operating system was messed up in 1995 with the reforms that came under the leadership of Sir Julius. Unfortunately, at the time, I think Sir J was ill-advised. I'll give you just one quick example of how PNG got messed up. Now, right now, you have members of parliament who are wearing three hats, who are governing over three tiers of government, and that's very it makes them become very ineffective. They become very inefficient. They are all over the place. They become ineffective at all levels. And I'll tell you why the problem came in 1995 with the reforms, with the new organic law on provincial governments and local level governments. Previously, you had the organic law on provincial governments, and what was allowed, that law was created in 1976, First Amendment, or one of the earliest amendments to the Constitution. And the problem with, or not the problem, the main feature of the previous provincial government system was that provinces had, there was a clear separation between provincial governments and the national government. So provincial members, you had provincial assemblies, and you had something or someone or an office called the premier. Most provinces had the premier of the province. And the premier of the province was provincially elected. You had provincial members of the assembly, and the provincial members of the provincial assembly were not members of the national parliament. And the members of the national parliament who were elected from the provinces were not members, except maybe depending on each respective provincial constitution or provincial law, depending on that, they would have observer status within the provincial government assembly. So the problem now, or 1995, when the reforms happened, now you had a provincial member from the province who was in the national parliament, and then you had the premier, who was the head of the provincial government, and he was, like, you could say, he was the prime minister of the province. He was the prime minister of the province. The provincial member to the national parliament was a representative that just became a voice in the national government, in the national parliament. So he advocated for laws, he advocated for whatever, but he didn't run the province. The province was run by the provincial assembly and the premier. And the people in the province would assess the performance of the provincial government based on the developments that were happening in the province. All right. And if the local member at the district level was not performing, it meant they didn't have development at the local district, so they would vote him out. Provincial members, because they had that autonomy from the provincial government, they were able to do stuff in their province very effectively. They were able to manage whatever monies that were given to the province. They were able to manage that to bring development. The premier, or the prime minister of the province, was able to lead the province or the provincial government independently from the national government. After the reforms, so before reforms, you had the premier as the head of the province, and then you had the provincial member as a representative to the national government. After the reforms in 1995, these two offices became one, and they became the governor's office. The governor's office default is that the provincial member to the national government is the governor for the office province, unless he becomes a minister or some other condition. Then he relinquishes the governorship to another provincial member of the provincial assembly. So now you have the governor becomes both the prime minister of the province as well as the provincial representative to the national government parliament. Problem now is that he has two hats. Now he has to manage national politics, he has to manage national interests, but he also has to manage his province. His province doesn't have much autonomy, isn't given much money these days. He doesn't have control over his provincial members, or they're almost autonomous. They're operating independently of the provincial assembly, because they have all been given individual powers like DSIP monies and individual monies, and they all think that they can become now every provincial member is not just, and not just the governor, every provincial member from every district is not just a provincial member of the provincial assembly. He's a national member of the national parliament. So he now has two hats, every one of them, he or she, they have two hats. They have the governor as a national agenda that he must pursue on behalf of his province, but then he must have a provincial agenda that he must pursue for his province. But his problem is he has to now navigate both national politics and provincial politics. So he has national, he's part of a national political party that he must align himself to that agenda. He's now also concerned that he has provincial constituents who are watching him, and every person in the province, they don't assess their provincial members by what they do nationally. They assess the provincial members, including the governor, or especially the governor, based on what happens locally, provincially, and they decide based on that whether they elect you back into parliament or not. So the governor has, and all the other members, but I'll just talk about the governor, so because it's simpler. The governor has to be making sure all his whole province people are happy. He takes their interest and he represents that to the national parliament, but he has to compromise that with national politics and national, all the MPs in national parliament, they all have their agenda, their ideas. So now they're thinking, so the governor is thinking, how do I best serve my province, but how do I also stay relevant and stay important at the national level? So that's the conundrum. So this is where I think our operating system in Papua New Guinea is messed up. Now you have, so that's just at the governor level, where two offices, the premier of the province and the representative of the province to the national parliament, were merged into one office called the governor's office. And now he's wearing two hats. So he has to act nationally, but he has to also act provincially. Now it's the same thing for every provincial or every member of every electorate. Now, previously, before the 1995 reforms, provincial members to the national parliament were different from the provincial assembly. So they weren't really concerned about what happened in the province because that was the responsibility of the provincial assembly, the provincial members, the provincial government. Now they have to be concerned because they're out here in the national government, but their provinces are suffering. So they're wondering, how can I best go back and work with the province? So now this is where there's even further problems now to how they operate as members of parliament. So the members of parliament are thinking, how can I bring development to my province so that my people vote me again to come into parliament? In the old days, they are just representing, pre-1995, they're just representing their province and speaking to the national issues. Now they must also go back and build bridges, build roads, build hospitals, etc. So the people in the province assess them based on that. The people in the province don't really care what you're doing and how you're contributing to the national parliament, to the national government. So now they're also in that conundrum. So they're not also contributing to the province, apart from the nation. They're also contributing to the local district, the local constituents, right? So they can sit in assembly, make a decision for the province, but they're also worried about their local constituencies because they're worried. The people down there are worried about whether you're building the bridges or not. They shouldn't be. The people down there shouldn't be worried about that. If the function of government was clear, the operating system of government was clear, you would have the national government take care of national business, national security, police, the army, the macroeconomic stuff. That's what the national government is supposed to take care of. Make laws that protect the nation as a whole, and so on. When it comes to province, the provincial assembly makes laws relating to the province, tries to build economic activity within the province, and carry on. Local MPs at the district constituent level, they're supposed to be concerned with just building bridges, making sure the law and order at the local area is good. The people are safe. The people are able to get to the markets, the schools, the stores, whatever. But now you have members of parliament who are concerned about all three tiers or levels of issues in the country, and they become ineffective at all of them. So now members of parliament, now they've been given also DSIP and PSIPs. Now they're becoming little prime ministers of their districts. So they are little prime ministers of their districts, and they are now trying to command development within their districts. Now that's the problem. Whilst they're doing that, they have to access money. Money is supposed to go to the province and then be trickled around into the province for agenda that the provincial assembly is supposed to set through its budget setting and all that. But now it's bypassing. So these local prime ministers of the districts, they access treasury through the DSIP, and they try to get all these funds to go and build bridges and roads and fix potholes and stuff like that. And it's a very small amount of money, but it's controlled by Waigani, which is the national government, the treasury. Now, if that money came to provinces as a bucket load, then they would not be worried about it. They just access that through the provincial system, and national government stays out of it. So now that they're there in the they become little prime ministers, they're all accessing money and trying to make sure they build bridges so they stay relevant, they stay important to their voters. That's who they're ultimately accountable to. So this is where our operating system is messed up. You have members of parliament who are doing too many things. They're wearing too many hats. They don't know where to access money, and then they end up compromising because in the people who control the money, the person who controls the purse, which is the national government, they decide whether you get your money for your local district or not. Unfortunately, they're using the DSIP to control the MPs. So the MPs have now, they're compromised. They can't work with the national parliament to be independent voices. Every member of parliament is an independent lawmaker. They're supposed to be considering every bill that comes before them independently, get legal advice, get whatever advice they need to get based primarily on the proposed legislation that is before them. Their number one job is lawmaking. But they can't do that effectively because they're worried about their political alignments, access to money, whether that money comes in time, because they want to look good in the eyes of their bosses, the constituents in the local districts. So now you have a problem of them just compromising everything because they're trying to achieve too many things at too many levels, and they're becoming ineffective at all of that. They don't read laws now. The number one job of being effective lawmakers, they're not doing well. How many of them read hundreds of pages of draft laws before they go in and vote on it? Because they can't do it well, they just align themselves with the political party, with the government of the day, and then they just vote without really analyzing the bill and whether seeing the effects of the bill in the long run. So now the problem with our national government and our national parliament is that you have members of parliament who have become project managers, who have become lobbyists for development packages from donor agencies, from the national government, from whatever source they can find money from. Now they're trying to make development happen in the province, as well as managing national politics. So we end up with bad laws. We end up with very bad laws, uh, laws that just because the government says they're good laws, the rest of parliament goes with it. Because if they don't, then the national government through the treasury maybe finds a way to frustrate the process by which you receive your DSIPs. And because they frustrate that process, you can't really do the little potholes and the aid posts and the schools and the bridges, etc. In your constituency. You are just stuck. So we're in this conundrum now. We need to get back to the old days where the provincial government just handles development as it pleases. And the national government just stays out of development in the province. Just take care of the national stuff, right? I remember when I was in high school back in, not high school, sorry, primary school in Wewak. My favorite thing to drive by was the provincial works department, where you saw all these yellow trucks and machines. And on the weekends, they're all working, fixing roads, whatever. You drive out to Maprik, down to Vivek, you see the yellow trucks doing work, etc. on the way. And so it was really good to see. Now you don't see them anymore. You drive by contractors. And the contractors are controlled by the national government, unfortunately. So this is where our system is built in a way, and is being more and more crafted in a way that makes development at every level really difficult. You have at the national level, you have laws that are passed that are not really the best for the country, but who knows? Because no one's really studying them, talking about them. They're not really, there's no deep dive into them. NGOs do the little thing and do the little bit, but otherwise, at the provincial level, They're compromised. They're not as effective as they can. You have local level ward councillors coming out from the local level government elections, but they're almost useless because they have no power, no money. They have some power under the organic law and provincial governments, but they're not using it because they don't know how. And to make matters worse, they don't have access to any funding anyway. So that's just a snapshot of the problems that we have as far as our system of government is concerned. I hope that we get back to the stage where provinces are left to just develop themselves, just drive their own development agenda, and the national parliamentarians are just doing national laws and doing national policy, and not really worried, not being worried about whether they get elected back based on whether the province is developed or the district is developing. So that's currently my take on where we are in terms of our development and our provincial government system, national government system. You'll notice right now there's a problem with there's an absence. There's no real provincial government. There's no real provincial government. You have, and you notice this. It's very clear in the elections. You have a national election, and then you have local level government elections. Now, where is the provincial election? All right, so that's where in the old days, provincial elections, all the local constituent presidents, council, ward members, they became members of the provincial assembly. Now you just elect the national members from your district, and they become the provincial members, and it's too many hats to wear. So there's a glitch in our system that I think we should look towards reforming. I think there's already been some discussion around that, but I hope that we will really look at this. We need to allow our members of parliament to really function to the best of their ability, to the number one function, which is lawmaking. Once they become project managers and lobbyists for funding, they become ineffective. They have to compromise. They have to do all sorts of silly things. All right. Well, that's my take on, let's call it, the glitch in the system, in the operating system of Papua New Guinea. All right. Thank you for watching.